Morning, brethren.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's the season for me, so I apologize for how I sound. I think some of you probably join me in some of those symptoms.
Yeah.
There were times when during my time in Florida for a few years that I preached, I sounded worse than this. I pray you never have to endure that. But I think we'll be able to get through this morning. So, my one and only slide is about to come up, I think, or is it not? There we go, my one and only slide. Take it in. Mark chapter 5, verses 21 through 43. I don't know if it was by accident or not, but of course, the passage for you chose couldn't have been better. It was about our walk with Christ, and that we need to walk in love. And our life is a journey, as those up here before the communion are talking about their walks and journeys. It is a walk and a journey, but it's a journey made up of little walks along the way. We're going to be looking at Jairus' walk with the Lord during a short time in his life today. And I want to begin just setting the groundwork here by reading Mark 5, 21 through 23. When Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the sea. Now, I just want to make this little note. If you look at Matthew's account, you'll see that Mark is jumping over some things that took place between him and Roddy and this encounter. But Mark is not concerned about about that. He's continuing the flow of what he is writing, as he's historically, as we understand, he's probably being inspired and dictating what Peter was telling him. So actually, if you go to Matthew, which we're not going to do, you would find that Jesus had been sitting at a meal, looks like, and was asked about a question about fasting. And then this gentleman comes up to him, and he is taken away from there. But when he crossed over, he had been over on the other side. One of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and kept begging him, "My little daughter is at death's door. Come and lay your hands on her so she can go and live." We really don't know much from these two accounts, from Matthew and Mark's account, about Jairus' character. Other than these two things that I think we can definitively lay our hands on. And one is, he did have faith that Jesus could heal his daughter. Now, he believed Jesus needed to be there and physically touch her to transfer that healing power. But he believed that Jesus could heal his daughter. And he loved his daughter. We can take hold of those two things very clearly. He absolutely loved his daughter. But as we continue reading on, we're going to perceive some other characteristics, I believe, about Jairus as well. And, as you consider the story, some of you may be able to relate to the duress Jairus would have been feeling at this time. I can't relate to it this directly, and I pray I never do. But my oldest brother died at age 10. And I'm not the only one, probably even in this audience, that has a similar story or something like that. But he died at age 10. I was 7.5 months old. I didn't know him. But everyone else in the family did. And it affected them. And by their reaction to it, it affected me. It affected us for the rest of our lives. It changed us. And it changed them dramatically at the point. My next oldest brothers were 8 and 7. You can just imagine how it changed their lives. During the time of the sickness, which from diagnosis to his passing was about 7 months, my father and mother would have circumnavigated the globe if they thought Jesus was walking in at that time, perform these kind of signs and miracles. So I'm sure that any effort Jairus was putting in here to make this happen was not what was on his mind at all. He was determined to give to Jesus. And during that time, of course, we know Jesus was here on this earth for a special purpose, for a certain amount of time, and he worked those miracles for specific reasons, because he could have healed everybody, and he didn't. And it's very important to know that. And I think understanding that also maybe gives us a better understanding as to how our prayers are answered. God answers our prayers during a specific time, during his time, for a specific purpose, to bring about his will. And as much as we would love to have had David still with us, it was not God's will. And it would have been an intervention of God. There was no tool of man, no medicine of man that was going to save him that we could get available to us. So that was a hard pill to swallow. I am thankful for my parents that after going through such trauma, and I saw my mother openly mourn him for over 7 years. They didn't deny the Lord, and they didn't blame the Lord. I'm so thankful for that. But these things change us, and I can't help but think about what Barbara shared with us this morning. You know, these events affect us in our lives. And I think, I think more of us walk away from the Lord from time to time than we may want to admit. Now, it may just be for a matter of days sometimes, maybe a matter of weeks, and sometimes in some cases it may be a matter of years. I am so thankful that Barbara realized the Lord did not walk away from her. Right. And that she turned around and embraced him, and she is hanging on tight. She's not letting go. Yeah. I'm confident of that, my sister. Yeah. I'm confident of that. But I appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate everything that's been shared up here. I wasn't, to be honest with you, I wasn't sure what I was going to think about this approach to it, but it has been very edifying. I'm very thankful for the testimonies. It's just not something I was used to. I know I come from a little different background, so. But anyway, here's Jairus, and his walk began to go search for Jesus because of what he believed he could do, and he didn't send somebody else; he went himself. So we've all had difficult walks in this world, of different kinds, and it could be along the lines of what we talked about. It could be, walking to see someone in the hospital not expected to live, that's very dear to us. It could be walking up to the casket because that decision's been made, and having to reconcile ourselves to that and being left behind. It could be a different kind of walk. It could be walking up to someone to repent for how you have betrayed them, how you have sinned against them. It could be a walk asking for repentance on their part, so that you can, so that your forgiveness can have greater meaning in their life, and they can ultimately receive God's forgiveness. And that's what those things are all about. Now, sometimes the most joyous day of some people's life, such as what Toby experienced, can also be a very difficult day because of what they may have to give up. And not everybody's in that position. I wasn't. I was surrounded by people saying, go, family, and so forth, and encouraging me all along the way. But some people don't have that support when they come to the Lord. They truly have to leave so much behind from day one at that birth. And I greatly admire that faith. I greatly admire that conviction for people who do that. So we have these short, little difficult walks as we go along. And so Jairus has begun his walk here. In verse 24, so Jesus went with him. All right, so here he is walking with Jesus. But he realizes he's not alone. So Jesus went with him, and a large crowd was following and pressing against him. how quickly can you walk when people are pressing against you?
Not very fast.
Have you ever been to a convention or maybe a concert or something? You're just all jammed in there trying to make your way through. New York City after 5 p.m. You know, I experienced that one time. That was enough for me. You guys can go and enjoy it all you want, but it wasn't that thrilling for me. You know, I felt like I was in a wave and I had lost complete control of my ability to decide where I was going to go down the street. It was insane. I tell you what, that takes some training to learn how to navigate that. But here they are pressed along, and I can just imagine how I would have felt. You know, I would have been so tempted to say, "Get out of the way! I have an emergency here. Move it!" Or maybe something a little worse. All those things are acceptable. We can all accept what I just did in that situation. We all would have been okay with that if somebody had screamed that out. But I may have gone to the next level. I said, "Get out of the way." And quite frankly, in that situation, I would have been okay to do that. I wouldn't want to hurt people. But Jairus isn't doing that. And I want to give him credit where credit's due. Now, maybe it was just a part of I'm going to act within my social norm here, but I think there's more going on. But I can't let my thoughts go there too quickly, being a parent. I'd lose it right here. I mean, I would lose it. You have to, parents, you understand, and the idea of what would you do to keep your child alive? You know, we would do quite a bit. There's some lines, obviously, we can't cross as Christians. We don't want to cross, even as human beings, but we would do quite a bit to make that happen. But we don't see him doing that. We don't see him doing that. He is acting in such a way here that, and as we see going through, that perhaps indicates he was a good choice to be the leader of that particular synagogue. He seems to show himself to be a respectable man. And then we encounter the following verses, beginning in verse 25. A woman suffering from bleeding for 12 years had endured much under many doctors. She had spent everything she had and was not helped at all. On the contrary, she became worse. Having heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his robe. For she said, "If I can just touch his robe, I'll be made well." Instantly her flow of blood ceased, and she sensed in her body that she was cured of her affliction. At once Jesus realized in himself that power had gone out from him. He turned around the crowd and said, "Who touched my robes?" And he didn't say it that way. I should rephrase my tongue. Who touched my robes? And again, I want to give Jairus credit, because I don't know what his reaction would have been. But me, I might have been saying, "Really? We were starting to make some progress here, and now you stopped. And you're asking who touched your robes?" But there's no indication he did that. I began to think that Jairus was maybe a better man than I am. I know Jesus was. None of us will argue that one. But I don't think Jairus was a better man than perhaps I am in some respects. But as to this woman, we don't know her name. We're not given her name. What we do learn later in the story is that Jairus' daughter is 12 years old. Here this woman's been suffering for 12 years. All the time his daughter's been alive, this woman's been suffering. And maybe that registered in his mind. You know, well, I've had my daughter for 12 years. They've been 12 good years. This woman's had 12 horrible years. You know, when you think about what she was enduring here with her condition. And facing all these failures by the doctors, and failed remedies, and false hope, and loss of hope. And here she sees Jesus, and she has faith, and she believes if I can just touch the hem of his garment, I'll be made whole. This woman was, in regards to the people around her in society, she was an outcast because of her condition. Go back to Leviticus 15. It says if a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, let's talk about an abnormal discharge, one that continues beyond what would be normal. So what this woman has, all the days of her discharge, she shall continue in uncleanness. And that's not a moral uncleanness. I think, we need to be careful when we read the Old Testament. It talks a lot about uncleanness and things, and we need to read the context and understand it's not always about morality. It's talking about hygiene in that day and age. To prevent the spread of disease and so forth. So that's what it's talking about here. But she shall be recognized that way. Every bed on which she lies will be the bed of her impurity. And everything she sits on will be unclean. And whoever touches these things will be unclean. Other people. Okay? For 12 years. If anyone who touches her becomes unclean as well, you can imagine that people would probably not want to touch her. I'll throw this in because, it's speculation. Others have talked about this and notes and commentaries. But it is possible that this woman was very wealthy at one time. And her wealth was consumed by searching for a cure. It's possible. Whatever wealth she did have, it was pretty much gone. It's possible that this woman was married at one time and may not be now because of this condition. That her husband may have left her because, after all, you can't bear any children with this physical condition. The woman had lost a lot. Even if both of those things are not true, she's endured a great deal. She has endured a great deal. For 12 years she has suffered and dared to hope. So she sees Jesus as her last chance. So against all odds, and setting aside the fact that she probably should not be in a crowd, she pushes through. She pushes through for that higher hope, for that faith that propels her to do something definitely outside of her comfort box. And I tell you, she's a great example to us for that. When she touches his cloak, two things happen simultaneously. Jesus and the woman both recognize something is happening immediately. She's healed within her body. He knows he's sent power out. Now remember that to touch someone who was unclean would make you unclean, but this doesn't happen to Jesus. That's not original with me, but I thought it was profound. That was a good thought. I want to share it. It didn't matter what uncleanness Jesus came in touch with. It did not make him unclean. His holiness overcame it. His purity overcame that. Instead, the opposite happens. Jesus is so pure that he cannot be tainted by her or our impurity. Amen. Instead, he transfers his purity to her, breaking the cycle of brokenness. And so he does for us. Her body's response is immediate. She feels it. She knows it. One touch had done what no doctor could do. There will be no more suffering, no more being ostracized, and no longer an outcast. And when we come into the Lord, that's what changes for us in regards to our relationship with God. Yes. We are no longer ostracized, we're no longer an outcast from Almighty God. Yes. But we are within all the blessings, and we embody all of the hope that comes with that. as we look forward to our lives that don't end. They just go through change, but they don't end. Continue our reading. At once, Jesus, realizing himself that power had gone out from him, he turned around to the crowd and said, "Who touched my robes?" His disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing against you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" Now this woman had touched his robe and then had gone away. She really did not want to be called out. It seems pretty evident from the context. She was just trying to do this privately and go away. And but Jesus is not letting her go away. He's inviting her to come forward. He's not accusing her. He's not angry. He's not upset that it happened. But he's inviting her to come forth. So he was looking around to see who had done this. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came with fear and trembling, fell down before him and told him the whole truth. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be free from your affliction." She tells him the whole story. And Jesus listens. Jesus was already on what we would consider a very important task. I'm on my way to do something pretty important for this gentleman over here. And we can imagine Jairus thinking, just cut to the chase. I was sick, I'm healed now, thank you, please. I see myself in this situation. It would be hard, and yet Jairus seems to recognize some things going on here. Number one, I'm reading a little bit into it, so please recognize that, but he seems to perhaps have some empathy for this woman. The 12 years probably wasn't lost on him. He's a smart guy to be in the position he's in. And hey, he healed her. He healed this woman. Well, now I know it can be done. I don't have to have faith. Jesus calls her daughter. Back to the woman, calls her daughter. "Daughter, you've been healed. Go." So this woman who had been ostracized and felt like a stepchild at the best in regards to her identity as a child of Abraham was now fully restored as a daughter of Israel, a daughter of Abraham. And I think we can probably say from her faith, a daughter of God. And though she's never named or recognized again in Scripture, she's probably, if she was still living, among those who were part of the early church there in Jerusalem. That would be my hope. My hope would be that Jairus also, as we see the story unfold, would have been among those. But her confession gives hope to Jairus. And we see Jairus through this whole thing showing patience. And one thing that stands out to me about this situation, and I think it's maybe amplified by what's about to happen next, is that Jairus was a leader. And yet, by going to seek out Jesus, he is submitting his leadership to Jesus. He's saying, "I'm coming to you, you lead me. You lead me to however you need to where I need you to be, to bring about what I need you to be, to please answer this request and heal the daughter. But I'm counting on you. I'm putting my faith in you." Well, it seems maybe his need for faith is not so great. in verse 35, I believe, if I can read this little verse marker. While he was still speaking, people came from the synagogue leader's house and said, "Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore?" But his need for faith just came back. His need for faith just came back. I had no doubt you could heal her, and now she's dead. Hebrews 11, verses 1 and 2. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. What we do not see. This is what the ancients were committed for. Jairus' physical confirmation that may have brought him a sense of certainty was about to be removed, and his need to lose faith in Jesus reaffirmed. To not lose faith in Jesus, reaffirmed. He needed to maintain his faith. He needed to continue to have faith because the circumstances have changed. Brothers and sisters, our faith must not be circumstance driven.
Yeah.
Must not. That sets us up to be tossed to and fro, as the good old King James would say, on those waves of indecision and false doctrines. Our faith must be in the person, the God Almighty, and His Son Jesus. And that's where I must reside. This traumatic news could have possibly shattered his faith, paralyzed him with doubt, left him emotionally unable to even act on any faith he might have had. Jairus has received many blessings along this walk of trial, beginning with recognizing his faith that propelled him forward to find Jesus, to Jesus accompanying him, to seeing a daughter of Jerusalem restored, and now we have this. Verse 36, but when Jesus overheard what was said, he told the synagogue leader, "Don't be afraid, only believe." Jesus knew this was hard for him. Jesus wasn't making light of this news. He knew it was hard for him. Remember, at Lazarus, when he was finally there with Mary and Martha, and the full weight of the passing of Lazarus came upon Jesus, he wept. He's not making light of death. He came to conquer it. He knows it's bad. He knows the trauma we go through. So at precisely the moment he needed words of encouragement, Jesus turns around and speaks to him. What a blessing it was that Jesus was walking along with him, that Jesus was there, and that Jesus provided what he needed so that he could still have the capacity to choose faith. Verses 37 and following. He did not let anyone accompany him except Peter, James, and John, James' brother. They came to the leader's house, and he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. He went in and said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep." They started laughing at him. But he put them all outside. He took the child's father, mother, and those who were with him, and entered the place where the child was. Then took the child by the hand and said to her, and I may not say this right, obviously, Talitha kum, which is translated, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately, I think it's important we recognize that in Scripture when we come across these miracles. But anyway, immediately, the girl got up and began to walk. She was 12 years old. At this, they were utterly astounded. Then he gave them strict orders that no one should know about this, and said that she should be given something to eat. When Jesus enters the house, he's met by these wailing mourners, and they mock him for saying she's asleep. But Jesus was able to see death for what it was, and they weren't. Jesus knew he had the power over death, and they didn't. Jesus had already touched an unclean woman. But perhaps the most unclean thing you could touch under the old law was a dead corpse, someone who had passed away. But again, it has no effect on him, and he does not hesitate to do that. This girl was dead. She was not asleep as we think of sleep. She was asleep in death. She was dead. But he tells her to get up. When Almighty God, through his Son, commands life, life comes. And her life, her soul re-enters her body, and she's alive once again. Two people came to Jesus that day looking for healing. That day, 2 daughters were given new life. So he starts out on this walk with Jairus to heal his daughter from a sickness. He ends up raising her from the dead, going beyond the expectations of Jairus, and in the process calling on him to have a faith that is constant, not circumstantial. You know, as you consider this story, maybe some of you, perhaps more among the women among us, the sisters among us, but maybe some of you identify more with the woman with the bleeding condition. Maybe you felt alone and isolated, maybe even judged by others for something that you can't help, looking for Jesus to understand and defend you. Maybe you feel hopelessly broken, and you're looking for Jesus to make you whole, to cleanse you, and make you pure again. Maybe you're coming to Jesus desperate as your last chance. He is our last chance. He is our last chance. If we refuse the revelation of Jesus through his Holy Spirit, if we refuse that teaching and seek our own way, there is no repentance available for us. There is no forgiveness available for us. There is no other way. He is our last chance. But if that's you, for some reason, know that we worship the same Jesus that healed that woman and raised the little girl from the dead. Amen. We worship that same Jesus. Know that when you encounter Jesus, he will claim you as his daughter. Jesus wants you to reach out for him in faith, so reach out and interrupt boldly. Think about the interruption that took place here. He's on his way to Jairus' house. She interrupts. Now, she didn't mean it to be an interruption in a rude way, but she interrupts the flow of events. Jesus is looking for us to interrupt. He wants us to, quote, interrupt. Call on him. Call on the name of the Lord. Pray to him. Bring our petitions to the Father through him. You know, or maybe you identify more with Jairus. Maybe you feel more like you asked Jesus to help, and it seems like Jesus has forgotten. He's not in a hurry. He's taking his own time. And you don't understand why you still have to wait. That's a common refrain in some of the Old Testament passages. I think maybe Isaiah we would think of the most when we consider the terms wait on the Lord. So we must wait on the Lord. But sometimes it's hard and sometimes it challenges our understanding. If you're there, know he hasn't forgotten you. Jairus' obstacle to faith wasn't that Jesus wasn't able to heal his daughter. It was that Jesus was delayed until it looked impossible. Nothing is impossible for God. As it says in Isaiah, I don't remember right offhand, is my arm too short? And that's God speaking. Really? You know, when he's somewhat chastising through the prophet, chastising the people that would hear the message. Is my arm too short to bring this about? Nothing's impossible for God. Let us never forget that. And indeed, I do sometimes. Let us not. This story paints a perfect portrait of the way God interacts with humanity and interacts with us. It's not, from our standpoint, always very pretty. Sometimes it's messy, chaotic, having to wait for this, having to wait for that, and oh my goodness, I had this to deal with. Why did this have to happen now? Lord, why are you allowing this? No, I don't even think that's a bad prayer. I hope not, because I pray that, Lord, why are you allowing this? And then on top of that, Lord, help me get through it and help me understand. And I think y'all in there too. But it can be very challenging from our perspective. But from God's, it's not a matter of chaos and Him trying to whack-a-mole so He can keep things under control. He knows what's going on. He knows why it's going on. And He knows when and where and how to act. To bring about blessings in our lives, but more importantly, to bring about His will. And His will affects us all. May God's will be done. But let us remember that no interruption is an inconvenience to our God, and to His Son Jesus. Every time someone reaches out for His cloak, He will look for them until they are found. Listen until their story is told, and love them with a love that claims them and declares them valuable. To see Jesus, every interruption is a son or a daughter. Do we see interruptions as Jesus saw them in our own lives? Yeah, I really had to ponder that one. And there are times when I'm so fixed on I need to get this done, and this comes up, and I may dismiss it, or I may say I will deal with that later, and maybe I fail to see that interruption for what it could be. Don't get me wrong, brother. Sometimes you're in a situation, and if you don't get it done, the kitchen's going to flood. I get it. All right, or whatever the immediate thing is that you've got to turn off or turn on, or keep the house from blowing up, whatever it might be. But there are times when we think there's something that just must be done that it can wait a few minutes. And I really need that one. But it can wait a few minutes because something more important has come up. You just haven't taken the time to see the importance of it and to see the need for it to be given attention. So often we go through our lives so focused on the end goal that we forget to live in between and be present in the moment, to keep our eyes open to the ways of God, who is working in this world all around us. So we need to be ever mindful and looking for those opportunities. Remember, Jesus was on a very important mission. Sometimes we may be involved in what we consider the heart of ministry work, and there's an interruption. And maybe we need to just pause for a few minutes to see, is that interruption actually more important than what I'm doing at this moment? It could be. Is this an interruption that could actually enhance what I'm doing at this moment? Is that not what happened in our story? It greatly enhanced what happened, and what happened to all involved. Sometimes knowing the right thing to do is about Jesus' will, not ours. It's recognizing Jesus' will. Sometimes we don't want to stray from our agenda, but we must live in constant communion with the Holy Spirit, asking what it is He would have us do. And a good way to respond to interruptions is to ask God, how can I show the love of Christ in this moment? Walk in love, right? That's what the passage said. We're to walk in love. How can I show the love of Christ in this moment? How can I offer healing where healing is needed? To listen to someone who needs to be heard. How can I do that? To to God's will, to their blessing, and to my blessing. You may be the one that's the most blessed out of that interruption. Brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, Jesus invites us to interrupt him. Let's not forget that. And then he invites us to join him on this journey of being interrupted by others, so that we can point them to the one who alone has power over sickness and health, sin, impurity, life, and death. Just as Jesus has found you, healed you, and saved you, he still has other sons and daughters to save. If you haven't yet encountered Jesus, he wants you to encounter him. So seek him out. Whether it's doubt, you've been afraid to acknowledge, pain you don't know how to express, sin that needs to be forgiven, or brokenness that needs to be made whole, your faith to reach out is the interruption Jesus is waiting for. No matter when you come, no matter what your story, he calls you and claims you as his own. He wants you to take hold and never let go. Sons and daughters, he wants to say to you that your faith has healed you. He wants to say to you, go in peace.